As a provider of a public service, a Milwaukee County Transit Service bus operator has an obligation to serve the public. Your passengers are customers in every sense of the word, and a commitment to making their ride a safe, efficient, and pleasant experience is a necessary and rewarding part of the job. Persons with disabilities represent a growing segment of the bus ridership in Milwaukee County. Their desire to be independent, combined with our evolving service, equipment, and mission, has made this possible. The Americans with Disabilities Act has specific requirements for providers of public transportation that serve this segment of the population. Our goal has always been to not just satisfy these requirements, but to exceed them. Persons with disabilities number about 43 million in the U.S. They are obviously relying on alternative skills, but are, for the most part, determined to carry on with their lives in as normal a fashion as possible. Goals are set and need to be accomplished, but, as a consequence of their disability, in a different manner. There are different types of disabilities that pose unique challenges and require different levels of assistance. In addition to providing service, common courtesy, and this especially applies to public servants, dictates that you ask if you can be of assistance, and then how. When communicating with a person with a disability, it is important to have a positive attitude and to communicate properly.
Okay, no problem.
The goal is to know what to say and how to say it without any fear of hurting anyone's feelings or not understanding what might be needed.
Where you heading?
The term disability is always preferred when referring to someone that requires additional assistance because of a physical or mental condition. Positive or neutral expressions are always better than negative ones used to describe a situation or equipment that a disabled person encounters. For example, people are hearing impaired or partially sighted instead of deaf, blind, crippled, or a victim of something. These positive descriptions acknowledge the individuality of each person instead of lumping them together as a group of helpless victims. An important thing to remember while assisting your passenger is to engage them in friendly conversation while assisting them. All passengers should be greeted as they enter the bus. Additional conversation should be part of any act of assistance. Many transit passengers new to the transit system may be a little nervous when using the bus, and this is also true for passengers with disabilities. They can be uncomfortable or insecure in situations that they perceive as risky or alienating. Regular users of public transportation are less likely to feel this way, but many are, and it is reassuring to them if they know you are concerned about their safety and comfort.
Do you need help?
A friendly conversation will reassure your passenger and provide them with useful information about the trip.
I'll let you know when we get to 76th Street.
Passengers are encouraged to report on the service they have received while riding the bus. This is an invaluable part of improving our service and contributes to the process of driver education. When conversing with passengers, be aware that the normal rules of speaking and listening may not apply. When speaking to someone in a wheelchair, for example, it's useful to place yourself at their level so it is not uncomfortable for them. People with visual impairments cannot see your facial expressions, so be aware that this part of communication is not a factor and that you may need to verbally accent something instead of relying on a smile or other expression. It is also important to determine how much and what type of assistance a passenger may want. Accommodation equipment is often considered part of a person's body and should only be handled after asking permission. Forcing assistance on someone might be perceived as rude or condescending, and there is also the chance that unwelcomed assistance is actually dangerous. A person in a wheelchair, for example, may not be expecting that extra push and might lose balance or control. So, again, make sure you ask if they need assistance. Like all Milwaukee County Transit System customers, passengers with disabilities are able to access route, operations, and procedural information in a number of ways. The MCTS website, ridemcts.com, and printed brochures that are available on the bus and at many locations throughout the community provide all manner of information, including route maps, schedules, stop locations, payment methods, and basic procedures for using the service. The website and brochures also have information about the fare cost and note that exact change is required. There is also information about the many other methods of payment, including reduced fare ID cards, Transit Plus card, New Freedom Pass, U-Pass, commuter value passes, and Medicare cards. MCTS passengers are encouraged to plan their trip, but there will be those who have not and will have questions about the route after they have boarded. Many passengers, especially those with disabilities, are regular passengers who repeatedly use specific routes at regular times. You should not always assume that this is the case, and be prepared to answer questions that they might have about the route and schedule. Passengers with disabilities are also encouraged to participate in the travel training program offered by MCTS. This is a hands-on training program that teaches people how to use the system safely and effectively. This free program will greatly enable persons with disabilities and seniors to become competent passengers, familiar with the equipment and operating procedures of the bus system. Basic travel skills such as planning, schedule reading, transfer use, and safety practices are covered in this training program. After planning, the next step a passenger makes in taking the bus trip is finding their way to a bus stop. MCTS provides well-marked bus stops that clearly indicate the routes that stop there. Some stops have shelters, and most have large concrete slabs that make it easier to wait for and then board the bus. These stops are ideal for all passengers with disabilities to enter and exit the bus, since they have maneuvering room and shelter from the elements. Stops without pads can be more difficult to negotiate, and drivers must be careful to stop the bus in a manner that provides the best access for passengers. Be especially aware of any traffic hazards that might be present and act accordingly. Sometimes, especially during winter weather or in construction zones, you will need to make stops that are not authorized. This is to say that the designated area in a bus stop zone is not accessible or simply not safe for any number of reasons, and an alternative stop area should be used. It is important to tell passengers with visual impairments about this change. Many persons with disabilities who are first-time riders are not familiar with public transit procedures and practices. Some have had training or have at least read about procedures for entering and exiting the bus. In any case, you should be prepared to instruct and sometimes assist them as they enter and exit.
On the ramp.
You are responsible for guiding and assisting the passenger to and from their seating location. This can include helping the passenger move from the door to their seat and also assisting them with their carry-on items. When you approach a stop and observe that a person with a disability is waiting, and you notice that space is not available because all of the designated space is already occupied by passengers with disabilities, you must stop your bus. You should then politely inform the passenger that you cannot safely accommodate them and that they should wait for the next bus. Also let them know about how long it will be before the next bus arrives.
However, there'll be another bus here shortly. Thank you, sir.
If there is ever a question about whether or not the kneeling feature is needed for a passenger, ask the passenger if they would like you to do so. This procedure takes almost no time, and any passenger will appreciate that you are making their entrance and exit as easy as possible. All wheeled conveyances will require use of the ramp and the securing features inside the bus.
Would you like to strap across the
Of the 43 million people with disabilities who live in the U.S., 25 million have mobility issues and require the use of wheelchairs, walkers, scooters, and other conveyances. There are many different causes of mobility disabilities, among them spinal injuries, multiple sclerosis, and cerebral palsy. Spinal injuries that require wheelchair use often result in the loss of muscular control from the waist down. More severe injuries can affect mobility from the neck down. Cerebral palsy affects the ability to control muscles and can cause uncontrollable movements of the arms and head. People with this disability often have difficulty communicating and quite often seem like they need assistance, but do not. Be sure to ask before assisting these passengers. There are basically two types of wheeled conveyances that passengers will be using: the wheelchair, powered or manual, and the powered scooter. Scooters are becoming more popular because they can be more socially acceptable to new riders and are less expensive than powered wheelchairs. They are, unfortunately, wider and longer than wheelchairs and require more space to maneuver and park. Wheelchairs are easier to maneuver, and allow for greater upper body mobility and increased stability and security. On occasion, a passenger may be in a wheelchair or scooter that exceeds the size limits that can be accommodated by the bus, and access may have to be denied. Make sure you immediately call dispatch if this situation arises and before denying access. When a wheelchair or scooter passenger is waiting at a stop, be sure that they are at least 5 feet from the front door and have them back up if they are closer. This will allow other passengers to enter and exit and provide clearance for the ramp. Prior to the passenger entering, you need to lift and lock the folding seat to create a space for the conveyance. The passenger may then enter the bus, and you should assist them as needed in maneuvering to the designated area. The fare box design and location is designed to make it easy for passengers to pay for their ride with cash or tickets. You will discover, however, that it is less than ideal for passengers riding in wheelchairs or scooters. Most passengers riding these conveyances use passes, so this may not be an issue. Scooters can be especially problematic since the rider is some distance from the fare box and their upper body movement is somewhat restricted. Make every effort to direct the passenger to the best possible location to make their fare deposit. The passenger should be consulted before securing their conveyance. Riders using scooters may sometimes ride in a bus seat. If this seems like it might be the case, ask or suggest to the passenger that they might be more comfortable and secure in a bus seat. Wheelchairs and scooters are unique vehicles that have different kinds of attachments and features for securing inside a moving vehicle. Asking the passenger's assistance, you will need to determine how to best secure their conveyance using the equipment on your bus. The wheel locks should be applied and the passenger, with their permission, additionally secured with the lap and shoulder belts. Make sure the passenger is aware of the touch strip so they can signal you when to stop. You should also ask them what their destination is and mention that you will be calling out stops and to listen for their stop to be called. After getting underway, it is important to visually check the secured conveyance for any kind of motion. Use your mirrors for this, so your attention is not diverted from the road. If necessary, pull over and resecure. It is important that transfer points be announced, as well as other major intersections and destination points, far enough in advance so that the persons with visual and other impairments have time to become oriented to their location.
Next stop, Antoinette Downer.
More importantly, after an individual has requested a stop, this must be announced with the same considerations in mind. Using the microphone will help those seated in the back half of the bus hear you when announcing stops and intersections. Wait for all other passengers to exit and enter the bus before releasing the securing attachments from a scooter or wheelchair. Remove and clear belts and unlock the wheels so the passenger can maneuver to the exit. Do not allow the passenger to proceed to the exit until you have lowered and secured the ramp into place. Direct or assist the passenger to the exit and down the ramp. Make sure they are clear of the ramp before retracting, and note that they are clear of any obstructions at the bus stop. Passengers with visual impairments number about 11 million nationwide. When picking up a passenger with a visual impairment at a stop that serves more than one route, it is important to clearly identify the route served by your bus before the rider enters.
Route 30.
They must be additionally assisted by verbally identifying your bus route number. Always ask a person with a visual impairment if you can offer assistance before you act.
Sure, I can do that.
All right, very good.
There's a seat to the right.
If you are asked to direct them to their seat, guide their hand to the back of the seat and describe it. When conversing, don't hesitate to use words like look or see, as these are part of a visually impaired person's vocabulary and they will not be confused or offended. If they do ask for assistance and would like you to guide them, let them take your arm and do not grab theirs. As you are leading, verbally describe the pathway and identify any obstacles or steps. Bus operators must permit service animals to board the bus with riders with disabilities. These animals often board with passengers with visual impairments, but can also be with persons with impaired hearing and others. They can be identified by a harness and an ID collar or other labeling device. If you are uncertain that the animal is a service animal, you must accept the assurance of the owner. These animals must be kept under control throughout the trip. If a passenger does have a service dog, always ask the owner before interacting with it. Deafness affects almost 2 million people in the U.S. In addition, many more have partial hearing loss. People with hearing disabilities can be difficult to identify. Obviously, hearing aids are a clue, but otherwise you will most likely have to be told by the person about their condition. If you or they have difficulty in understanding a passenger, use paper and pencil to communicate. And if an interpreter is being used, continue to speak directly to the hearing impaired person and not the interpreter. Many people with hearing loss are able to hear you by reading your lips. Speak clearly at a normal speed without exaggerating, and do not block your mouth or turn away. Subtle changes in tone and volume or expression may not be heard by persons with hearing impairments, and they will rely on your facial expressions to convey these messages. This is exactly opposite the situation with persons who are visually impaired. About 3% of the U.S. population experience developmental delays. Most of these, up to 90%, are considered mildly disabled, but these individuals are very wide-ranging in the type and severity of their disability. These conditions can be difficult to identify. If you suspect a passenger may be developmentally disabled, be alert for any signs that they might need assistance. When communicating with a person with a developmental disability, speak to them as you would to anyone, but with simple, clear sentences.
Where you headed? Mayfair? Okay, I can take you there.
Again, make sure you first ask if they require assistance before doing so. If a response or reaction to a situation seems odd, remember that this is a reflection of the disability and not disrespectful or challenging behavior. A particular type of mental disability is called Alzheimer's disease. People who have this condition are usually older, but it can affect younger people as well. The condition is characterized by memory loss, often to the point where a person is lost, confused, and sometimes angry. Again, establish eye contact and speak clearly and in short sentences. Sometimes a passenger with Alzheimer's did not intend to board the bus, but did so because they are confused and forgetful. In situations like this, look for an identification bracelet that contains contact information. Another developmental disability, actually a neurological disorder, is epilepsy. Like cerebral palsy, epilepsy can cause uncontrolled movements of the body. An important difference is the possibility of a seizure. A severe seizure, called a grand mal seizure, will cause complete loss of control of the body that can last several minutes. This cannot be controlled, so the best thing to do is have the person lie on their side and remove all objects from the area. Remove glasses, loosen tight clothing, and turn the head to the side. When the seizure ends, the person will usually be able to resume normal activity. If the person does not seem capable following the seizure, contact the dispatcher to arrange for medical attention. As a provider of a public service, a Milwaukee County Transit System bus operator has an obligation to serve the public. Your passengers are customers in every sense of the word. Your commitment to making passengers with disabilities feel safe, comfortable, and accepted on your bus is a necessary and rewarding part of the job. An increasing number of passengers will be using the bus as their primary means of transportation. Again, this is a community service, and you are a representative of a civic organization that is responsible for providing this service. Remember that these passengers need this service and also have a desire to be independent. Public transportation allows them to accomplish this. Common courtesy, understanding, and a desire to help will help them and us accomplish these goals. For additional information on ADA guidelines for transit operators, please refer to the overview provided in the driver training materials. This will provide more detailed information for many of the situations and procedures covered by this video.